As Nigerians react to the outcome of the 2023 presidential election, an election observer, Yaga Africa, has asserted that the Independent National Electoral Commission missed an opportunity in the history of conducting elections. Now, while addressing a press conference in Abuja, the co-chair Yaga Africa board, Dr. Aisha Abdullahi, while presenting a statement tagged post-election statement on 2023 presidential election, pointed that the 2023 presidential elections are once again a missed opportunity. Now let's expand the discussion further, and we have in the studio at this time Program Manager Election, Yaga Africa, Paul James. Good morning, Mr. Paul, and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
All right, good morning. Welcome to Daybreak. The elections have come and gone, and there's lots of issues here and there concerning that. But first of all, let's look at the position of your organization. You said it was a missed opportunity by INEC. Can you further expand on that?
Well, we thought the election was a rollback over what we have seen in recent times. If you compare this to Ekiti and Osun election, I know for election context, if you want to compare one election to the other election, especially the ones on a national scale. But looking at the 2023 elections, that came with a lot of promises. This is the election that was, one, predicated on the new Electoral Act, and two, also we thought with the new advancement technology, it will be deepened further in the elections that will also help to show off citizens' confidence in the process. If you compare this to the 2015 elections, to the 2019 election, you will see some similar trends around logistics, trends around late commencement of polls, and even the violence that greeted the polls in certain locations. On the part of the commission, before the election, we were very hopeful. We thought the commission was doing something that was very commendable. For instance, for the first time, the commission decided to produce ballot papers locally, which to some extent also implied that, means that they did early deployment. In fairness to the commission did early deployments of materials. By Wednesday before the election, materials have reached most of the major cities. By Thursday, materials have started going to the registration area centers, local government headquarters, and all of that. What we saw was, the rollback on Saturday morning, but before then, we got a sense that there could potentially be problems, because on the eve of the election, for instance, we decided to deploy people across the registration areas. Even in Abuja, we had people all over the federation. We have long-term observers that have been observing the process since November of last year, that are in all the 774 local government. But specifically, we decided to deploy the Yaga leadership in Abuja to go and observe some of the processes at the registration area centers. And we got the sense that evening that some were complaining about resources, welfare for personnel, if they don't access cash, for instance, that it could impact deployment the previous morning. We reached out to some officials of INEC, and they told us, oh, this has always been a problem, but we shouldn't worry, that this will be resolved in the morning of the election. We went into that election, we saw all that had happened. For instance, on the morning of the election, if you read that report about the deployment and commencement of polls, only 27% of locations had INEC officials by 7:30 in the morning. And then if you read the INEC guideline, the guideline specifically said while the polls is expected to start at 8:30 in the morning, officials were advised to be there from 7 in the morning so they could put out all campaign materials and get the place ready for voting. But by 7:30, like I said, only 27% had at least one INEC officials. By 9:30 in the morning, according to the report, only 44% had commence accreditation and voting. What was the trend that we saw? If you compare this to 2015, it's also about similar trend that by 9:30 only about 41% of location has started accreditation and voting. Now the challenge we saw here is also the fact that there was similar trend as what we saw in 2019. The Southeast geopolitical zone, for instance, accreditation and voting began by 9:30 in only 11% of polling units, and then the South-South geopolitical zone in 29% of polling units. This is also similar to what we saw in 2019, that by 9:30 only 10% of polling units had begun accreditation and voting in the South-East geopolitical zone. Now, what was the worry for us? We thought the commission was just in a rush to take the bus and perhaps break the jinx of not being able to conduct election on the first day of voting for all the times that it has set out to commence the process. But was the commission fully ready? I thought they were not. If they will be honest with themselves, I thought they were not. Because, I mean, with all that had happened in the election and the kind of questions that are coming from this election, I thought the commission should have done a better job before going forward with the elections. And nothing stops the commission from even staggering the polls if they are not ready. Sincerely, we got about 150 days window to conduct election. They got until the handover period of May 29 to conduct elections. So nothing stops the commission from staggering the polls if they were not fully ready. For instance, this is the election that will be determined by the number of PVCs collected. If you recall, 4 years ago, by January to early February, we started getting weekly updates from the commission about the number of PVCs collected. And then going into February before the election, they started providing almost daily update about the number of PVCs collected. This was also the election that people kept asking questions, how many PVCs were collected? Until the week of the election, before we got the data of PVC collected per state, not per polling unit. Now you went into this election, and now the commission is, I mean, if you recall what happened at the collation center, when they talk about council polling unit, and you ask, the chair will ask how many PVCs were collected in this council polling unit. I am not sure there is any public record anywhere to indicate the number of PVCs per polling unit. The commission had informed Nigerians about what was collected per state, but I don't think we have that public information about the polling unit level results. This is on one part, even on the part of the election administration. This is also the process, I mean the election that the commission planned with the power now of with the backing of the new electoral act. The commission planned to deploy technology. We go back to this planning or the process of deploying the technology. By January 3rd of this year, the commission deployed the last sets of beavers to the states. About 181,000 beavers by modern voter registration systems were deployed. The intention was to test them, to field test all of these beavers before the deployment. Between the 4th of January and the 11th of January, the commission conducted this test. But then the commission said it was its routine internal process and did not open it to the public. We were able to deploy observers to all the INEC offices. This exercise happened at the INEC state offices, headquarters. We were not allowed to observe in about 17 locations, including even the FCT. In the places where we observed, we saw some problems. Number one, most of the beavers were not connecting to the internet. We deployed over a 4-day period, and most of the report we got across board was a concern about not connecting to the internet. No, but because they were supposed to install the Kaspersky antivirus on the machine, Chrome application on the machine, the Beavers interface was supposed to be activated, and then the IRF for uploading result was supposed to be activated based on the guideline or document they had for that. And then the problems we saw then, there were concerns with the Beavers not recognizing some fingerprints. There were concerns with even the camera on some of the beavers, and then the power button. States like Edo, for instance, reported shortfall of 40 beavers. This is the report that the officials shared with our observers. There were shortfall in Edo State like Kwara reported they had no backup. Like the commission just sent exact number for the polling unit. There was no backup beavers as of January. Now, after that, INEC did one novel exercise, which was the mock accreditation that happened on February 4th, which we thought was good to provide opportunity to Nigerians to see firsthand how INEC was going to conduct the elections, especially for first-time voters, and also even for INEC officials to get their hands-on practical on how to use the equipment. But what were the concerns with the mock exercise? It happened well by all standards, I mean for all intent and purpose, what INEC intended. INEC picked 436 locations in all of the senatorial districts, which by my estimation, I thought INEC also carefully picked this location, because what did we see? The beavers worked well. We deployed observers to 218, which is like half of the location. One in every two of the polling units, we had an observer. We discovered as of then that it took an average of 2 minutes in 74% of location where we observed. It took an average of 2 minutes to process a voter. And then it took us about 3 to 5 minutes in 26% of location, which indicate that to a large extent that process worked. But what were the concerns there? As of then, INEC intended also to do an end-to-end to upload the results during the mock exercise. Asked INEC for the report of the mock exercise. That guideline was complied with in only 16 states. Now, beyond that also, if you think about the timing for that, that happened on the 4th of February, barely 20 days before the election. So whatever will have been the concerns from the mock exercise, I thought INEC wouldn't have had enough time to fix the problems before they go to the election. Number two concern with that was, if you recall, that is also when Nigerians begin to discover INEC have migrated them to other polling units. Just imagine the day that people are discovering it. There was no prior communication, no prior information to voters. That was also after when INEC told Nigerians we are not going to conduct election in 240 locations because we could not allocate voters to those locations. Now, of those people that were migrated, there were no, like I said, proper communication. What INEC did at the end was just to send link to people, check online where you are going to vote. How many people have access to it? We sit sometimes in Abuja and just be assuming that it is the same across board. How many people have access to the social media or the internet to be able to do that? The third concern I saw with the mock exercise was also the fact that the people that handled the mock exercise were INEC permanent staff, not the ad hoc staff that INEC would have deployed for the election day. So these are people perhaps that have used this equipment over and over. So whatever could have been the challenge that the ad hoc staff will have discovered, or that will also allow INEC to provide further training, we missed that opportunity. We went into the training on the election day. I was sincerely concerned, given what we have seen in the past, that even in the FCT election, if you remember, some of them said they were seeing the beavers for the first time on election day because of the kind of training method that INEC adopted. On the morning of the election, in the FCT election, some of these INEC ad hoc staff were replaced. We felt that that could also have happened for the 2023 election. Now, you went to that election that morning. We saw the concerns with the beavers. In 88%, INEC deployed beavers across most of the polling units that we observed. It worked effectively in 88% of locations that we observed. In about 8%, the beavers malfunctioned and was replaced. Was fixed rather. In about 2%, they were malfunctioned and were not replaced. Now, these 2% were the locations that INEC had told some voters to return on Sunday, February 26th, for a second round of election. We deployed observers to 1,507 sampled polling units, representative sample of polling that are spread in all the 774 local governments. Of this number of polling units, INEC did not conduct election in 20 polling units. They told people in this location to return on Sunday for another round of election.
Were elections held on Sunday?
Exactly. Thank you for the question. We returned on Sunday. In 13 of these, elections were not held.
Are these the same polling units where you said you're not allowed to observe?
No. Let's not mix it. The first conversation was in INEC offices where they did the field testing. But for election, they were allowed to observe in every location. But I'm just saying, there were locations that INEC had intended to go back on Sunday to conduct election.
So was there any reason given for the election not being conducted in those units?
There was no reason. INEC officials didn't show up. Now, don't forget, I told you we sampled. Imagine what you do with samples sometimes is to infer, to extrapolate. Imagine if this is a handful, or this is just from a sample of polling units, how many polling units will have been impacted? Now, this has been the concern with elections in Nigeria. To my mind, INEC is always in a hurry to complete the process, and then allow Nigeria to go to the courts for courts to help us finish up the process. And I thought that was what happened. Because if you make commitment to Nigerians that you were going to go back the following day to continue the election, I don't know what will have stopped INEC from going back. All they were waiting for was to collate the entire results and beginning to apply the margin of lead principle. Now, which in a sense, I thought sincerely that it's also another technical way of disenfranchising Nigerians. We didn't talk so much about the 2019 election because of the way it went and also the way the country was divided at that point. If you go back to the 2019, over 3 million votes were cancelled. These are legitimate votes of Nigerians that were supposed to count in that election. In Rivers State in 2019, elections were cancelled in 6 local governments. In case you don't remember, go back and see the reports from 2019. We quickly just move on like they don't matter, affecting over 927,000 voters. Nasarawa State in 2019, in the morning of the election, the votes was going one direction, and at some point we started seeing cancellation. We got alarmed that we had to send one of our state coordinators to travel to INEC office to confirm what was happening, whether observers were just sending us rubbish data. He went and got back to us and was like, it is true. Results eventually are.
That's in 2019 now.
This was in 2019.
All right. So now let's do a slight comparison now between 2019 now and 2023. Will you say there has been an improvement in the electoral process?
Well, in the recently conducted off-cycle election, yes. But for the 2023 election, I thought it was a rollback on the part of the commission, because if you analyze even the statement coming from the commission, the statement that was released some 2 days ago, I think on Saturday Saturday, by the INEC chairman, INEC admitted also that he didn't do well in that election. And then the problem, like we also have been seeing, is, like I said, INEC is always quick to move on to the next one. INEC is already talking about March 11 without a retrospect, reviewing, auditing what has happened. No name has been called. Nobody has been shamed. Nobody has been punished. We knew there were problems. We knew there were challenges. We're already talking about the next one.
You just said they admitted that the elections didn't go well, which means they actually did a post-mortem and they did a retrospect and found out that there were problems with the election, and they admitted it.
It doesn't stop at just telling Nigerians there was problem. If there is problem, you know it is your problem. Allow me as a registered voter to be able to exercise my franchise.
Yeah, but that's why they said that they are going to make amends in the governorship election. They have figured out the problems that were there in the presidential, and now they're going to make amends.
Well,
because that's the thing.
I get the point.
Yeah.
I get the point. But let it also be clear. This was the election that we all have high hopes, high expectations for. The election.
Were the expectations too high?
Wait. This is the election that INEC, the official budget that we knew for the election was 305 billion naira, taxpayers' money. INEC got support from other donor agencies that we are also not talking about. If you pull all of these resources together, we know what it will be amounting to. This is on the financial side. Secondly, think about the number of registered voters that INEC claimed it has registered. For the first time, 93 million Nigerians. INEC also claimed it has issued 87 million PVCs. What was the turnout against these numbers?
Okay, I was actually going to, come to that. The turnout apparently is 25 million electorates. Now, I want you to actually, talk more on the low voter turnout in the elections, because some quarters have actually said that this 2023 presidential election is actually the worst, it has the worst turnout in Africa.
Yes. Now, this is because if you go back to our history from 1999, the numbers have just been reducing, not increasing. The more investment you make in elections, the more the number retrogress. Of this 27 million or 24%, 20-something percent that voted, it wasn't like people didn't show up. You need to look at certain elements, certain things that happened around the elections that inhibited or that affected participation. Number one is the commencement of polls. Generally, INEC deployed late. When INEC arrived at the polling, what we saw was the attempt in some location to meet up, to catch up with the time. Now, I have observed elections across Africa. The recent was even in Benin Republic. This is the only country, as far as I know, that you are conducting election under 6 hours. With the kind of population we have in Nigeria, 8:30 to 2 p.m. Most countries you go, they start election at 6 a.m. It ends at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Now, think about what happened on election day. Even for the application of the beavers, we thought the beavers was not evenly distributed. The voting population, I know migrated voters, but we have locations that had more than 1,000 voters. In fact, we have 10,000 locations, 10,000 polling units that have 1,000 or more. There are locations that still have 11,000 voters, 8,000 voters, 4,000 voters. Think about management of personnel, management of voters in those locations. Now, think also about how INEC allocated beavers to those locations. Not just even in the allocation of the beavers. In some of these locations, how the beavers was utilized. You will see an INEC official struggling for 10 minutes to capture one voter. All they did, to the best that I know, is all attempt to suppress voters, because if you are impatient, you get angry and you leave. So now, there were locations that voting started at 4 p.m. when voting officially is supposed to end at 2 in the morning.
So what you're saying now is that people came out to vote?
People came out.
Okay.
People came out. It wasn't like people didn't show up. People came out, but the system that was put in place by INEC technically disenfranchised people. From INEC lackluster attitude, especially in management of logistics, from how INEC also managed some of the materials or equipment around the polling unit. Don't forget, there were also reports of locations where INEC didn't even have ink to apply on voters' cuticle. That also constituted delays.
Okay, so what about violence that actually marred some of the polling units? Was that also a factor?
Well, I wouldn't say it is a factor, but if you want to extrapolate also, you look at the scale and scope of the violence. To what degree was the violence? People are not even talking about violence in this election, because I don't think it happened to the level that it happens in the past, yes, compared to the past. That is not even what we are praying for. Well, even with the signs or the indicators you saw before the election that this election could not potentially happen because of violence, we were surprised that in the location that were even considered red zones before the election, people were able to go out to participate in the process. But like I said, there is no just room for excuses here. If INEC wasn't ready, we don't have to conduct election across the federation on the same day. Before the election, we conducted a pre-election mapping. Consistently from November, we issued 4 reports. In one of the reports, I think in the second or third report, we highlighted locations to the polling unit level where we thought there were concerns of insecurities, because we could not recruit observers. In some places, we had to get people from nearby communities that are willing to go and observe there in case INEC will even conduct election in those locations because of violence. We call on the eve of the election in Niger State here, Shiroro local government. A community was sacked by terrorists because of violence. 2015 election was postponed by 6 weeks because the commission thought it was not ready because of insecurity.
Okay. Well,
What is stopping us from applying the same methodology now?
All right, well, some of these challenges that you've actually mentioned, do you think INEC should have addressed all these before they began collation of results?
Yes. So this is the problem with INEC as well. INEC is, I'm sorry, I'm very critical of INEC today because I thought after all of this, for us, we just want to be seeing progress. It is madness that every time you'll be doing the same thing and be getting the same result. I don't want our approach for election to just be transactional. I've been observing election for a number of years now, and by my estimation, sincerely, I thought this election took us back. You wanted to have a new template for measuring progress in election. But now, if people are even talking about this election, people are comparing this election to the 2007 election, not even 2011, 2015 election that also came with their own challenges. So on the part of the commission, what I thought has been the problem is public communication. The commission is always reactive, not proactive in its communication. What do I mean by that? Go back to, there was a video before the election that was making run about people taking information from PVCs. The video went viral before a communication came from Festus Okoye, Director of Voter Education, INEC, National Commission of Voter Education. What was the video about? This was simply an effort by INEC to be able to harvest information about voters so they could communicate to voters that their PVCs were ready. A very good idea, a very novel exercise. What you expect the commission to have done before then was to tell Nigerians that this is what we intended to do, because there were a lot of PVCs lying fallow that INEC didn't have a central database where they could just communicate at once, maybe by text blast to voters to say, your PVCs are ready, come and pick them up in social location. So they had to start going by the printed PVCs to collect voter information. Now, for the election, for instance, recently we saw another communication by INEC about the intention to continue to use the beavers even for the coming election. Why was this coming? Because there have already been propaganda. People are beginning to run with the narrative that INEC is not going to be using the beavers. All you need from INEC is a constant assurance, constant communication with Nigerians. This is the step we have taken. These are even the challenges. For me, it is better we manage expectations before we go into this exercise than to go to the exercise and then INEC is grappling with what to tell Nigerians. Think about even election day. There were reports or evidence about late commencement. What do you expect from INEC in that regard? You expect a communication from INEC that will direct or instruct its official nationwide that because of the delay in the commencement of polls, extend the time of voting. There was no such communication. So any official would just decide to use that discretion because the guidelines say they should start from 8:30 in the morning and end by 2 p.m. So every time what you see from INEC is trying to react to what the public is, public narrative about certain issues.
Okay.
Even on the beavers, for instance, the kind of assurance people want, with the sort of report that is coming from result upload, not uploading results and all of that, you want the communication from INEC the moment this is happening. Some of us are angry because at every point we were engaging INEC, what are your plans for this? For God's sake, we know this is you are scaling up the deployment of beavers. You have done it in other elections. In fact, even in the mock exercise, there were locations where INEC deployed 2 beavers. In 35% of location, they deploy 2 beavers. You are going to the national election that have a lot of questions about data security and all of that. You need to be providing that constant assurance to Nigerians. Look at what Nigerians are doing. The only thing you can fall back to was a video by the INEC chair in November 2022, where he made commitment that they were going to deploy beavers and then they were ready for that. By December, we had a meeting with some persons in INEC where we asked the question whether you have the bandwidth to accommodate the kind of data that is expected. Oh, we are ready. We are fully ready. We are fully ready. 176,000 polling units. Everybody knows this is massive.
Okay, now you just still, touching on the upload of or transmission of results. Now, a particular chieftain of the APC, his name is Ekene Enefe, actually said the reason why INEC didn't adopt the electronic transmission of results is because some parties brought in hackers from Israel and Russia to manipulate the results of the 2023 general elections. So what's your thoughts?
Did we hear that officially from INEC? For me, at the moment, this is the one I should believe in from INEC. And that's why I talk about INEC's public communication. The upload of the result is not rocket science. They said at the end of the election, let us be clear, this is not about electronic transmission of results. The section 47 of the new act has allowed INEC to use any means possible for voter accreditation and all of that. Now, even for the voter accreditation, what INEC intends to do is that, to my sense, what I understand is as we are being accredited, at every time, the record is uploaded on the INEC server. INEC promised Nigerians that at the end of voting, they were going to submit the number of accredited voters. So it is just beyond submission of results. They were going to submit the number of accredited voters on the IREF. Today is about 9 days after the election. Results are still being submitted. Results are still being uploaded. As of this morning, before I joined this show, 92% of these results have been submitted. So it is just beyond, it is beyond even the results. Because the number of accredited voters is what the final result is predicated upon. If you want to measure valid vote, invalid votes and all of that, it is based on the number of accredited voters in that location. So up to this moment, as we speak, INEC have not concluded the upload of that, even before we come to the results. So that is why I say on the part of INEC, you expect a communication. If we are having challenges, be honest with Nigerians. Let us understand. We are all in this together.
Thank you
we
very
know
much,
the human
Mr.
element
Paul.
will always,
Sadly, we
always
actually have to, stop you here. But thank you so much, for this insights that you've actually brought to us on Daybreak this morning. We appreciate you for taking time to come on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that was Program Manager Election, Yaga Africa, Mr. Paul James. We'll take a quick breather and move on to our second discussion. Stick around. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now let's move on to our second discussion. And Atiku Abubakar, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, has won the presidential election in Osun State. Now reacting to the victory in a statement, Adekunle Akindele, the caretaker chairperson of PDP in Osun, said the result only reaffirms the validity of Ademola Adeleke's election as the state governor. Now, Chief Press Secretary to the former governor, Oyetola Ismail Omipidan, joins us in the studio for more discussion. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
The pleasure is mine. Good morning.
All right, so the PDP is quite bullish when it comes to Osun State. They said since they won the presidential election there, when just concluded general elections, now they feel that it's a stamp of approval showing that the governorship election that is currently in question right now should not be questioned. What is your take on that?
Thank you very much. Good enough, before the presidential and National Assembly election, we did raise the alarm, not once, not twice, on the plot by the PDP to militarize the state. And as Allah will have it, we have their candidates, most of whom have now been elected, on tape, on viral video, where they either call their members out to deploy all manner of weapons against, our people. And on the day of the election, they did carry out their threat. As I speak to you, over 20 of APC members have been killed in Osun. One particular notorious political thug known as Carlos Fadaunsi was arrested 2 weeks to the election, but on the eve of the election, he was released. And this was the guy who led the onslaught on our members in Ilesha. Now, if they claim that what happened during the presidential election reaffirms their victory, this is what I would say. In the governorship election, they claimed they scored over 400,000 votes when they were not in government. And so by implication, now that they are in government, whatever it was that they did when they were outside government should have also helped them to even increase that tally. But in the presidential election, in spite of the intimidation, in spite of the manipulation, they only recorded 350-something thousand votes. And we got 240-something, in spite of the intimidation. So for me, the outcome of that election is not a true test of what the people of Osun would have want to do.
So when you got indications or when you got wind of the tactics, so to speak, just like you alleged right now that there was some underhanded tactics used by the party, when you got wind of this, did you go to the authorities? Yeah,
in fact, we wrote a series of petitions. If the police authorities are watching me now, they can, disprove my claim. We wrote petitions. It was some of our petitions that led to the arrest of the House of Reps elect from Ila Federal Constituency, where I come from. In fact, he particularly was the one who led the onslaught against our people in Ila. It's video, it's in the public domain. He was arrested and questioned. It was based on that petition. One father on scene was arrested. And when Father on scene was arrested, there was a bit of respite. But on the eve of election, he was released. So certainly, he must have been released to do just one thing, that is to carry out what they are used to doing. And you see, because we are known for peace, and because we governed that state for 4 years before a temporary setback, and for those 4 years, Osun was known as one of the most peaceful states in Nigeria. And if within 3 months, Osun is in the news for the wrong reasons, your guess is as good as mine.
But some have actually said that it only reaffirms the validity of Ademola Adeleke's election as governor.
I have just said that it doesn't reaffirm any validity, because if during the governorship, when they were not in government, they could garner over 400,000 votes, now that they are in government, I think they should have done better, if not maintain that standard. But they came to about 350 something.
But PDP actually won all the senatorial and House of Assembly seats there.
Well, we have told the world that we are going to challenge those elections because we have credible evidence to show that there were infractions. For example, Emir He's called Emir. That is his alias. His real name is Olalekan Ajagungbade. He's on the wanted list of the Nigerian police, but he's one of those that is always leading the security of the current governor. So he was the one who led the team to attack polling units in Iragbiji, where my principal comes from. 2 of his boys have been arrested. I think 2 of them were arraigned in court last week. So we have evidence to prove that they never won the election they are claiming to have won.
All right, so lots of issues to actually explore concerning the political chair in Osun State, but unfortunately we are out of time. But before you go, looking at all these issues right now on ground and everything, all the allegations and what you've said so far, what next for APC in Osun State?
Well, we are going into election this Saturday, and I believe very strongly that we'll do better, hoping that the security will live up to their their biddings. And as far as Osun is concerned, the tribunal has reaffirmed that my principal actually won the July 16th election. The PDP, they have appealed that judgment, and we believe very strongly that, inshallah, we will carry the day at the end of the day, because apart from the issue of overvoting, which we were able to prove beyond all reasonable doubt, we are also challenging his eligibility to contest for that election, because we have credible evidence to prove that he has no educational qualification that he's claiming to have. And good enough, the 3 justices agreed that we were able to prove that his certificates were forged, but that because he had acquired additional qualification, so to speak, they think he was qualified to stand for the election. But the argument of some of us, including myself, is that, look, if we believe foundation is everything, and we believe in the popular saying that you cannot build anything, you cannot build something on nothing, it goes further to show that since the foundation is faulty, whatever that is built on it cannot stand. So we believe very strongly that we are going to carry the day at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you very much. Lots of issues to discuss. Hope subsequently we'll have you on the show soon so that we can explore all those angles. Thank you very much for coming on.
The pleasure is mine.